Welcome to Paradelphia Radio. This is Rick Pruitt here once again in the Toxic Studios, and we have officially made it to the month of December in this hell year of 2020. So it's been quite the accomplishment to get this far. I know you're all thrilled. Thanksgiving's over. We're pushing on towards Christmas. And Halloween was over 4 weeks ago or more. But we have a Halloween-ish type treat for you guys tonight, because our guest tonight, we're going to get right in there with him, is a filmmaker from South Jersey who you have heard on our air before. He is doing big things. His latest film is a film you guys have to see. It's called Human Hibachi, and the guy I'm talking about is on with us right now, Mr. Mario Cerrito. Mario, what's up, brother?
What's up, Rick? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, I want to get right into this, man, because this is, you got some big things going on.
Yes, very big.
So let's kind of start off, though, by explaining a little bit about your story, because I think it's interesting, the way that you started all of this. You know, you're now working on your third, you're working on your fourth, picture right now. You're doing pre-production on your fourth. And this all started maybe, eight or 9 years ago, and it's an interesting story, and it's an inspiring type story for anybody that kind of has, a dream that they want to just do something that seems kind of out of left field, and maybe they can't do it because it's it's above them or beyond them. You were in the same situation, and why don't you explain a little bit about how this all started for you?
Yeah, so I never wanted to get into film, to be honest with you. It kind of just came to me. I was an athlete coming out of high school. Bouncing between jobs. I never, nothing stuck. And then I think in 2007, I wrote a screenplay, put it away. And in 2011, I met my wife, and she read it, and she said, "This is really good." And I said, "Oh, thanks." And she goes, "You should try and get it made." And I was like, "How do I do that?" I had no connections in the industry at all. I had no clue how to get a screenplay made. I just didn't know what to do. So I reached out to a couple people on Facebook, and I started to make connections. And I met with a local producer that took a liking to this script, and I started watching what he was doing. And I was I don't have a formal education in film. I just picked it up. So I started training under him, and we had a little bit of a falling out. And then I said, you know what, I kind of like this. I had a little knack for it, so I wrote Deadly Gamble, which was 2013. Which I set, for like a real affordable budget. I think it was 10 grand. And I got two investors behind it, and we did that in 2013. And that's when it all really started, because that got worldwide distribution. And then it all started to, take off after that, really.
Right. And again, you tell this story. I've heard you talk about this in different contexts, but just sitting there, I think you were saying something about a park bench by Audubon Lake, just writing a screenplay one day. And here you are, 8 years later, and now you're working on your fourth film.
Right. And the fourth film, and it's crazy with this film that I'm doing now, that's called The House in the Pines. I would have never dreamt 8 years ago that I'd be working with the people that I'm working with on this now.
Yeah.
Starting from nothing. Like, it was just crazy how it's all transpired.
Yeah. And we're definitely going to touch on that toward the end here, because I do want to mention some of that, because that's big stuff coming up. But as far as the the films that you've put out there, I wouldn't necessarily call the films, the latest one, Human Hibachi, you have to say, is horror film. The two prior to that, you kind of have gone a little more horror each time. You went suspense heavy on Deadly Gamble, a little bit more horror with The Listing in 2017. Right. And then Human Hibachi is definitely a horror film.
That's
So the genre, either suspense or horror, what draws you to that?
Honestly, number one, it's because when you're an independent filmmaker, budget, you got to take, if you want to make a movie, you got to do something that you can afford to do. And horror and comedy are pretty much the only films that you can really do well for cheap. And that was the number one thing. Number two, I've always liked horror. Growing up, it's something about, or I consider like suspense thrillers under that umbrella, but something that makes you think, something that, can happen in everyday life, which I like to do. And it kind of just makes it it's a fun ride to do. Like from writing it to directing it to editing it. It's something I really enjoy.
Yeah. Now, one of the things about your films, and I've said this before when we've had you on the air, less is more with your films, and,
Yeah.
and you do something that it's maybe it's instinctive for you, but it seems like it wouldn't be that easy to do. But you take a small budget and you take a small cast and limited resources, and you
Hmm.
make a film that has a small feel, almost a claustrophobic feel
Right.
because of that, and you kind of
Right.
lean into that, and it
Right.
works really well in your films. And I can't imagine that's something that is easy to do, or maybe it is for you, but it wouldn't seem like it would be easy for anybody to do.
Yeah. Basically, it's going to feel like that because of the limited funds. I mean, if I had $1 million budget, you can really open the movie up because then you could use different locations. You get a lot of production value. So when you're working with anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000, you really just it becomes limited. So at that point, you got to make a good story.
Right,
So that's kind of what I mean. So I'm right now everything's real story driven.
right,
But then if I was working with $500,000 or $1 million, then the films open up just because you have money to do it. So
right. But I think that, like, a lot of famous films have been like that. They've been small budget films, and a lot of stuff in the last year has been like that because of COVID. Because people have had
absolutely,
to reconsider what filmmaking is in the last 8 or 10 months. Um, and
yes,
you really see people getting creative. The cream kind of rises to the top when people are forced to get creative, and that's kind
absolutely,
of what you've done. Yours hasn't so far been because of COVID. Yours has been because of the budget, but it's the same sort
yeah,
of principle.
yes, absolutely,
Yeah, so it's kind of one of those things where take like Night of the Living Dead for example. George Romero shot
right.
that. I don't know what his budget was, but maybe a couple $1,000s, a few thousand
It was a
dollars,
couple
whatever that
thousand,
was.
yeah,
Yeah, and that was back in the late '60s, and he used
yep,
local people that he knew in, I think it was the Pittsburgh area. He had some friends, and
resources,
basically,
yeah,
yeah, like he had a couple of people that were actually trained actors that were the main characters in the film. But other
yeah.
than that, most of those people were just like walk on characters from the guy at the grocery store, and he and
If
he
he was available, he used them, yeah,
yeah, and he made
yeah,
that work, and it's a classic film.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
go ahead.
And that's what it is, Rick. Is when you are limited, you got to make it work, and it comes down to creativity and like if you're creative and you kind of have a vision, you can make stuff good,
Yeah,
and that's what a lot of people fail to do. A lot of kids will get into filmmaking, and they'll be like, oh well, I'm writing a script that's $250,000. Well, dude, like if you've never had experience doing anything, where are
right,
you getting 250? So you got to learn from the bottom and then grow with your ideas, and that's kind of what I've done. And that's what I try and preach to people that ask me, what do you think, should I just go for $500,000 in the script? I'm like, but where?
right,
And you just can't do that
right,
unless you're a trust fund baby.
yeah, and it's and that's I hold a lot of respect for you for doing that, because it's
Yeah,
something that like you say, not everyone is going to look at it that way. People kind of get full of themselves sometimes, especially if you're going through school and you graduate and you have that degree to hang, or whatever it might be, and you say, okay, I went through
right,
film school and now I'm going to go make $100,000 picture. Well, you're not
yeah,
Steven Spielberg out of the gate. So,
that's right, yeah,
and I think a lot of people tend to like you've kind of leaned into this horror, and this, especially with this latest film. It, you know, Truly, it's an exploitation film. It's like an old school
it is,
nineteen
it is,
seventies
yeah,
era exploitation film,
it
and a
is,
lot of
yeah,
people would shy away from that because it's
right,
they're kind of like they're above it. But you, and
yeah,
I don't know if that's something that you want to do more of in the future, or if that was just a means to an end. But I have respect for the fact that you leaned into it and said, you know what, this is what I can do now. This is where I'm going to get
right,
my foothold, and then we'll see where
right,
it goes from there.
right. I could talk about why I did it and how, like, and in the future what I think I can do with stuff like that. I honestly, this idea hit me with human hibachi,
Yeah.
and I think I had just got done doing the listing. I think when I wrote it, so I was like, I'm going to do a film that I could do on limited budget. and just make it interesting. And I was like, well, I didn't feel like working with like a whole camera crew again. I kind of wanted to do it myself because, it is stressful when you do these films.
Mhm.
So I was like, how can I make a film where I could be the camera guy and I can tell a good story? And that's why I became where I shot it on the iPhone. And I listen, out of all the things that I've done since I've been doing this, I really enjoyed doing that movie. I literally had fun from start to finish.
Yeah.
And it jumping into that movie, it is something I would do in the future, like an exploitation, just because you got to do something different to get a following on any kind of movie, because there's so many films that just fall into like a pool, a thriller film. What separates a thriller film from another thriller film? Not much. Now, this film, Human Hibachi, there's a lot
Right.
that's going to separate it, and that's why I did it to stand out. And I feel like it hit the mark, for standing out. And when people see it, they'll understand why.
Yeah, absolutely. So talking about Human Hibachi a little bit more, I've known you for 4 or 5 years now, and honestly, you're a nice guy. You got a nice family, but you come up with these crazy ideas. This is a film that is born of the mind of a serial killer.
Yeah.
So
Right.
where do you get this stuff? Where does this come from?
So honestly, man, like most of my ideas stem off of something that happened in my life or at the time. So I was at a hibachi restaurant and we were drinking wine, and I said, wouldn't that be crazy if they were cooking up humans and serving it to us, and we had no idea. And then that's kind of where then I get into the tank and I start writing. And we've discussed this before, how like the screenplay comes along, you have that central idea, and then you just build around it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how so that's how that idea happened, and that's how most of my ideas happen. Like I think Deadly Gamble, I was working as a car salesman at the time, and I was in back of a car, giving a test drive, and two guys, I was in a coupe, so I was stuck in the back with these two guys, and they were speaking a foreign language. It sounded like Russian. And they were speeding down the road, and I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna get kidnapped with these guys in the back. They're stealing the car. And that's kind of how Deadly Gamble, I got that little nucleus of an idea, and then you just build around it. And that's kind of how my ideas come about.
So do you have like a little booklet you write down all these ideas that pop into your head throughout the day, or is it
No, because I get so many of them, and there's only a few that are actually good.
So this movie Deadly Gamble, first off, why don't you let people know where they can get it, because it is available now.
Deadly Gamble or Human Hibachi?
I'm sorry, not Deadly Gamble. Human Hibachi. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Human Hibachi.
Yeah.
Yeah. So right now it is directly on humanhibachi.com. Humanhibachi.com. You could buy the DVD, which are actually being shipped out in like a week. And you can also stream it on there too.
Nice. Now this is a film that it's one, like I said, it's an exploitation type film. There's no way around it.
It is.
And with those type of films, you're not going to generally get accepted by the mainstream right off the bat. So
No.
you kind of have to get creative, not just with the filmmaking, but with your distribution. So
Yes.
how did you approach that when it came to this film?
So all right. So at first, well, I knew making the movie that I was going to have problems with, like, mainstream distribution, just because of what's in the movie, and some of the stuff that's in it, obviously, is kind of, graphic.
Right.
Yeah, and the mainstream platforms like an Amazon, a Vudu, Google Play, they really censor what they put on there. So I knew that going in that I was going to have problems. But I kept going with my vision that I wanted to see through. I wanted to do that. I wanted to put what's in the film, I wanted to keep in there, because I feel like that's what's going to separate it in the long run. And that's what makes a film memorable too, is having stuff like that in there. So we did. I submitted it to Amazon, and it was rejected, and they gave me the reason why. And I knew that I had to go a different route, and that's why I put it direct on humanhibachi.com. Just because I knew that nobody was going to stop that. So
right.
But yeah, so we did have some issues, but it's actually, now I just came into some good news. So
yeah, we were talking about that before air. So
yeah,
I haven't spilled the beans. I'll do that off air here with it'll be something Mike's interested in.
Yeah,
we'll get into that later. But
yeah.
Yeah, but as far as the distribution, yeah, you're working on that, and right now,
Yeah,
it's limited, but it's still out there, and
it's still out there. Sure.
yeah, and it's available, and once
I've
you
gotten rentals from China, Italy, England, Mexico. So it's actually reaching other countries, which is great.
so how does a film like this? That's an interesting point. We talk a lot about the U.S. and we know this market pretty well, but how does this film like this play in other parts of the world? Is there certain places it plays better than others?
Yeah, I feel like I think this will do really well in Asia and Europe.
Okay.
Just because the people out there are a little crazier, I guess, when it comes to this kind of stuff. I don't know if you ever heard of a film called a Serbian film.
Oh yeah.
It's a real Yeah, so stuff like that, like they're really super into. So
Yeah.
that's another reason I made it, is because I knew that I had a strong hunch that it would do well overseas.
Yeah. There's a market for that kind
There
of
is,
film.
yeah,
Yeah. It's definitely
for sure.
definitely not what you would consider a mainstream film, but it's definitely there's a market for anything, and that's what I was saying
There
earlier. You
is.
kind of have to lean into it.
You do,
Know
yeah,
your audience.
absolutely.
So in general, these are films that you've made, but growing up, what kind of film were you interested in? Were you always interested in horror, or did this come out of something from your childhood, or?
So I liked baseball movies because I was a baseball player. So
Okay.
I was big into any kind of baseball films.
Field of Dreams and
I like,
whatnot. Yeah.
oh yeah, Field of Dreams, Sandlot, all those movies.
Yeah.
I did like horror when I got into like my early teens, probably 12, 11, 13. I started really getting into horror.
Mhm.
Halloween was probably the first real horror movie I saw, and
Yeah.
it scared the shit out of me when I was like 12.
And that's another example of a
So
low budget film.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that was really what hooked me into the genre was Halloween, and
Yeah.
then it went from there, and then. But I was never a big like movie buff, man. I was an athlete. Again,
Yeah.
I grew up playing baseball.
Yeah. Were you more into writing than filmmaking? Like, did you write when you were younger? Like,
I
it's
did. It's funny. I didn't know it at the time, but I wrote a story when I think I was like 11 or 12. It was like a horror book. You know what I mean? Something that never materialized, but
right.
I still have it. It's like 60 pages of like mush,
Yeah.
but I guess that's where I got my start. I guess, I was writing at 11 or 12.
Be interesting to take that now and kind of rework it and see what you could do with it. You ever thought
I
about
know.
doing that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, because what it is the premise is so overplayed though, like what I wrote then. But it was,
Okay.
I mean, it was cool for like the age. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. We talked about how this the Human Hibachi is kind of like a throwback to that 60s and 70s era exploitation film.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yeah,
Yep, all that stuff. Texas Chain, and it's another
yeah,
example. Those guys. Toby Hooper made that film for what, 10 grand or something back then, or whatever
yeah.
whatever the budget was.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, yeah, and that's you talk about a limited cast. What do you have? 7, 8 people in that cast.
Yeah, 7, 8 people, a house.
House in the middle of nowhere, and there's
That's
your
right,
film.
yeah,
And
and a bunch of crazies. Yeah,
a bunch of crazies.
yeah,
But as far as the horror genre, it's interesting because if you think about it, the genre itself kind of dictates what is going on in the world at large when these films are coming out.
yeah.
And it almost I heard one time that horror films always are on the uptick when financially the country is in a depression. And if you think
Really?
about it, yeah, if you think about it, the 30s when the original like Universal horror movies, Dracula,
Yeah.
Frankenstein, all that stuff came out,
Right.
that was during the Great Depression. Right up
Right.
until the beginning of World War II, you had the Wolfman and all that come out in the early 40s.
Right.
And then once the depression kind of eased off because of the war,
hmm
and then after the war, you kind of had that time when America was like the great the optimistic 50s.
Yeah.
Right. And so you didn't
When
have
times were good.
yeah, and you didn't have that
Yeah.
that horror anymore. You had more sci-fi.
That's
That
so
was
weird to think about.
yeah. But then once you get back into like Vietnam and things like that, then you started to have the horror genre kick
In the
back
70s and the late 60s
Yes.
and 70s, right?
Yep.
Maybe because people just want to wallow in their depression, man.
It's something psychological where it's something where
Yeah,
horror films reflect society.
right.
And so when you're writing these type of films, like Human Hibachi and things like that,
Right.
it really does mirror society, and God knows society's been, fucked up six ways from Sunday the last few years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it kind of works right into that cliche, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's definitely an interesting aspect of the entire genre.
Maybe I'm just always dark in my mind or something. I just live with
Now,
it.
well, it's interesting because you and this is no secret, because it was about a year ago you had Ghost Nation
Yeah.
come out to your house.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you talk about that a little bit? How'd that come to be?
That's crazy. What's funny is I don't even know how it came to be. I mean, I do, but I don't like. So obviously, Doug,
Yeah.
Bogate.
Right.
We called you and him, and because we had moved into this house in 2016, and we were hearing stuff, and my wife and my stepdaughter were just like being spooked. And my son started seeing things, so we were like, "What is going on?" So we called. I think you had told Doug or something, and we had you guys come over. Remember?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And you guys had done that investigation, and we picked up some stuff, and then I think you came back again, right?
I think we came back twice. Yeah,
it was twice, yeah. And
Right.
then I don't know what happened from there. I think, did Doug reach out to the Travel Channel, or the Travel Channel reached out to Doug?
Yeah, it was.
One or the other.
I think Doug. He reached out somehow to the Travel Channel to see about potential topics for Ghost Nation, and they picked
They bid
this
it.
case.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
So they picked our house. And at the time, I being in the business, nothing's really solid until it's solid. So I'm
Right.
just thinking like, they're just throwing ideas around. But then they were really like hard on us, and they were calling us, and then all of a sudden they sent us contracts, and they're like, we're coming. I think it was like Memorial Day weekend or something, or a week.
Yeah.
And they came here and they filmed for a week, kicked us out of our house, couldn't even come and get the mail. And so they filmed here, and actually, they came here and stuff has been like way better. They figured out what was going on. It was that high EMF we had here.
Yeah.
And they found the root, and it's been better.
Yeah. It was actually in fact, we picked up. I remember during the investigation we picked up. It was in your bedroom or something. There was one particular wall had a really
it was
high
super
EMF
high
level.
Yeah.
And we couldn't figure out what that was all about. And they said it was the wiring in the wall that was kicking out
That's
real
right,
high
yeah.
EMF. So
that was crazy. It was crazy, and and it's true to the story. When I would write, that's when things would really peak. Like it was feeding off like that dark energy I was giving off.
Yeah, and it's weird because you have to wonder, because I mean that is that would explain the EMF, and that might explain some of the stuff. But I know you told me that your son, who was maybe what 2 or 3 at the time.
Yeah, he was like 1.5 or 2 at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, he said something about seeing a monster in the basement.
Yeah. Yes.
Like literally said, "I see a monster in the basement."
I was changing his diaper, and he stood up. I stood him up, and he looked over my shoulder, and he started pointing, and I was like, "What's the matter?" And he's like, "There's a monster."
Yeah.
And I turned around, there was nothing there, and I was like, "Oh man!" That's when I was like home alone with him, and I was like, "Oh man!" I was like, "Uh-oh!" And then I said, "Where is it?" And then he said it went down the basement, and he started pointing down the basement. I said, "What's down there?" He said, "It's a green monster." I was like, "Oh boy!" And that's kind of when I was like, "We got to do something about this."
So have you asked him about that since?
No.
Have you talked about it? No. Nothing.
He probably doesn't even remember. I think he might have been 1.5.
Yeah, I mean, I was just curious to see if
he was a baby. Yeah.
Yeah, but if he held that memory and could say, "Oh, now that he's more vocal as a 4-year-old,
he could understand more." Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then
I never.
Was your stepdaughter saw something outside by a tree or something? I remember there was a story about a tree in your backyard.
Yeah, she would see a lot of things out back here. I'm actually outside right now on the porch, so now I'm starting to get a little freaked out. It's cold out here. No,
yeah.
She would see things out back in the house, in the shower. A little girl in the shower, like all kinds of crazy stuff.
That's right.
Yeah, so I was just like, man, this is crazy, and that's kind of crazy how it all transpired.
And then you had something with a was it a ceiling panel leading up to your attic that went missing? Wasn't it something like that?
We still haven't found that. We still haven't found it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was right after you guys were here investigating, because Doug had went up there or something. It was like one of those covers to get up to the attic for the steps on the ceiling.
Right.
He had moved it, and I I think it flew off or something, and it's gone. We haven't seen it, and it literally just vanished. So don't
Interesting.
know how that happens. Yeah.
So you still haven't found the panel.
Nah.
It's been like 2 years.
It's
now.
gone.
Wow.
Yeah, it's gone. Literally vanished. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. So the EMF stuff, I respect the fact that they came out and they found that EMF issue. And
yeah,
that can lead to various things. I don't know that it explains all of it though.
No.
I tend to believe your
what
son.
I kind of say. What I kind of say is like with the EMF, like this is the kind of example I give is like, like a street light and all the bugs attract to the street light.
Right.
Because I kind of think that whatever's around this area was attracting to the house. I don't know if it was the actual house per se, but spirits that were wandering and they were attracted to the house because of how high it was. They said our EMF was the highest that they've ever seen.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
which is insane. I mean, the guy's been investigating,
right.
for 40 years now. Yeah. so,
hey, it's one explanation, but it would be very interesting to see, if anything goes on there in the future or how that plays out.
Hopefully I'll be out of here before then.
Hollywood, man. Hollywood.
Yeah. LA.
Excuse me. So, you've had Human Hibachi out now for a few weeks, and you are now in pre-production for a film coming up in 2021, called The House in the Pines. So what can you tell us about that?
Okay. So, what happened was I had taken, Human Hibachi to New Jersey Horror Con in Atlantic City. And I had a table there. And there was I guess you can call it like a celebrity section there that people were signing autographs.
Mm-hmm.
I was just walking around because, we were bored. I had somebody cover the table and I wanted to see who was back there. I think Carmen Electra was back there. So it was pretty cool. I was just seeing people. So I went up to a gentleman named Mick Strawn. He was the production designer on Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, I think 1990. What else was he on? Blade. He was a production designer on Blade, on Candyman. So he's been in the business for a while, a Hollywood veteran production designer, art director.
Right.
So I went up to him and I shook his hand and I said, listen, I have an idea I want to send to you. So, I didn't think anything of it. I friended him on Facebook and I kind of said, hey, remember me? He probably didn't because there was, thousands of people there that weekend, what I mean? So whatever. So I said, listen, Mick, I said, I want to send you a screenplay. And I was writing The House in the Pines over the pandemic when we were on lockdown for those like 3-4 months that we were just home.
Right.
I was writing. So I got done, and I think it might have been August or September. I said, listen, I'm going to send you the script. So I sent it to him, and he read it, and he loved it. He was like, he's like, this is great. He's like, do you mind if I come on as the director? Because I at first wanted him to come on as just like a producer. And I said, I'm looking for somebody to direct this because I'm kind of not burned out, but I've done a lot in the last, 4 or 5 years. Right. So I kind of wanted just to take a step back from directing on this and be a writer and producer.
Yeah.
So he read it. He loved it. We collaborated for the past probably 2 months now, going back and forth on ideas. And the script went from good to really good with his input. And, the guy's amazing. Like he's a visionary. I mean, like the ideas that he came up with for the script has literally put it from like I said, good to amazing. Yeah. And we are now attaching all kinds of people that have worked on Hollywood films. Nick Benson is doing the special effects. He was the special effects on Nightmare on Elm Street, The Blob, another huge film. So it's really crazy now that, me being this guy that started what I want to say from nothing, working with these guys that, I've watched these movies growing up and it's crazy. So.
Right. And it was a ballsy move, saying, hey, I got a script for you, because he's got to hear that. He has to hear that 3-4 times a week, hey, I got a script for you.
He gets that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And credit to him for reading it. Cause you figure you get all that stuff coming out. You go, whatever, but he read it.
Right.
And he liked it. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's everything happens for a reason, man. I can't really put a finger on why that happened or why this is happening, but I just keep going with it and just keep throwing stuff
Right.
against the wall and hopefully something sticks.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
it's one of those things where I know that you are putting out quality because I've seen your films and I know that I
Right.
like them. But my
Yep.
taste may not be everyone's taste. I happen to like your films, but
Right.
whatever. But when you start
Yeah.
getting people who have been in the business like Mick and like people like that
Yeah.
are giving you the time of day. Like like you say, these guys get films or scripts thrown at them
All the
left
time.
and right. So for them to say, "Hey, man,"
Validation.
right, it's validation that you're doing
Yep.
something different than
Correct.
90 whatever percent of the other people.
And that's funny you bring that up. That's funny you bring that up because when you are an artist or especially like a writer, like anybody can say they're a writer. Your next door neighbor can say I'm a writer.
Right,
Anybody can say I'm a screenwriter.
right,
And then when you're actually doing it, you start second guessing yourself. You're like maybe I'm just like everybody else. But then exactly what you're saying is when you send something to these guys and then they're like, yeah, I'm attaching myself. And then when they start saying, how good this is going to be, you're thinking in your mind, like, maybe I'm doing something right here.
right.
And that's exactly like, yeah, it comes down to validation.
So how would you describe this film without giving too much away? Obviously,
Throwback. So it's definitely an 80s throwback type of campy horror with paranormal elements to it. It's something that has, like, I always like to have twists at the end. So
Mhm.
it's twisty. It's going to keep people guessing. And it's a definite throwback film. And that I feel like is what the horror genre is missing right now.
Yeah,
So
yeah. They had it
yeah,
for a while with M. Night Shyamalan. He did that a lot
yeah,
in the early 2000s, and then
right.
lately it's kind of been you went through that
Yeah, it's
that
just all over the place. What they're doing now, which I can't stand, is recreating classics, and that just stop. Just don't,
right.
like,
Yeah,
like Carrie, and like they're just recreating classics that should never be touched.
yeah, and I feel the same way. Like you have
Yeah,
you have so much creativity out there. Why not pick a new idea? It doesn't
exactly.
make any
Because
sense.
they don't, why because they can't think on their own. So what they're doing is they're going back and they're saying, all right, let's just throw $100 million into it and try and make 200 million. They're not really getting creative. They're just trying to recycle, and that's not.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and it's a shame because you have a lot of people like yourself out there that are doing interesting film work that are being kind
exactly,
of not passed over, but I mean, you're not getting a look like you normally would, um,
exactly,
because they're so focused on the quote unquote name brand that they're redoing for the third time.
100%.
Yeah, it's a
And
shame.
that's what makes this opportunity I have right now so special because it's kind of like I crossed the barrier from your independent filmmaker to now I'm working with guys that worked on Hollywood films, and
Yeah,
that's kind of what I always intended to happen, but a lot of people intend for that to happen and it never happens. So when it
right.
actually happens, it's like it's a blessing, man. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
So what's your dream project? Somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, here's a blank check. What are you gonna do? Horror? You gonna do some kind of other type of genre? What are you looking
Hmm,
at?"
that's a good question. I have other ideas in my head that aren't horror, but I would say I would do a big budget horror film on an original idea. So somebody said, "Listen, we're going to give you $100 million." It'd probably be a horror film
Mhm.
with a big budget.
All right. Well,
Absolutely, because I'm trying to stay in the horror genre. I do love it. That's what I'm trying to brand as, and I think I would probably I would stay in horror.
so now you've gone both ways with this. You've written heavy on suspense, and you've written one that is heavy on physical horror and gore. So
Yes.
with that unlimited budget, that hypothetical you just threw out there, which way would you go? Would you go more psychological or more aesthetic and gore?
I would probably go aesthetic, something like Hostel, Saw, something like where you can really get into the effects. Um,
You just want to play
yeah,
around with
I
fake
do.
blood. That's what you want to do.
Yeah, I'm into that. um, yeah, I don't know, man, but I do like both though because, like I said, I do like the psychological stuff too.
Yeah.
So
If you can combine the
You know,
two,
like
that's money right
you
there.
can combine the two, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
So,
always
which is kind of like the House in the Pines. I mean, the House in the Pines is
it
kind of
is.
a combination of psychological and blood and all that. So
It is. Yeah, you gave me a
yeah,
little preview of that, and I do know what that's about, and it is. You know,
yes,
I wanted you to describe it because I want to hear it from you. But yeah, I agree
yeah,
with what you
it
said
is.
there.
Yeah,
Um,
it's definitely you know, see something like the House in the Pines could be shot on $150,000 or 15 million. I mean, you can get it done on
right,
both levels, but that's kind of how I wrote the script.
right. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting movie, and it's what's your production schedule for that to come out?
So right now we're in we're kind of like developmental pre-production right now. We just got the script buttoned up to where we wanted it to be. We're gonna start right now. It's kind of bad to like do anything because of the virus raging, and
Right, right.
uh, yeah, it's like raging out of control. But we're looking to shoot it in the summer 2021 in Tennessee, where Mick is actually from.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah,
And the good thing about this film, again, it's a film that is limited in terms of scope. So
yep,
you talk about the virus, and you can't have these giant film sets
yeah,
and giant casts. You don't need that. You didn't write it that way.
no. No,
So
I
that
try and stay smart when it comes to writing that way. So I know what can be done and what can't be done.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I know you're
It's
out
all
there.
about story, man.
Yeah, I hear you. I know you're out there
Yeah,
freezing your ass off, so I appreciate you hanging in there with us here.
yeah, I appreciate it, man. I have fun.
So
It's fun.
for your films, again, with either with Human Hibachi or any of your films, if anybody wanted to find out more about your films or to purchase them or to see
Yeah,
them, why don't you let everybody know where they can do that?
yeah. So you can follow me on Facebook. I'm pretty active on Facebook. I actually just deleted my Instagram, but I'm pretty active on Facebook. I usually post anything to do with films on there. Humanhibachi.com. You can rent the video or the movie directly on there and purchase the DVD if you're interested in that. But yeah, Mario Cerrito III is my official page on Facebook, and I pretty much keep everything up to date on there.
All right, very cool, and we'll definitely have all the
Yeah,
links in
man.
our show notes for anybody that wants to piggyback off of this podcast and find you wherever you
Absolutely.
whatever they want to do, whatever part of Mario's world they want to explore. All
That's
right,
cool.
man. Well, again, I want to thank you for taking time out tonight and sitting out there and freezing
No,
your ass off for us.
nah, that's good, man. It gives the vibe, that whole shiver and shudder vibe.
And you can go out
The
and check your
cold.
backyard now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But
All
yeah,
right,
thanks for
brother.
having me, and as always, I appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, you have a good night, and I will talk to you soon.
Yeah, you got it, brother. All
All
right.
right, man. All right, so that was Mario Cerrito. He is the director, the writer of Human Hibachi, which you guys can get on humanhibachi.com. That is a film that again, it's one of those things that you have to be into that type of a film, but there are a lot of people that are, and it's very very visceral. It's not something you're gonna pop up and watch during what do they call that, Mike? NSF, not safe for work kind of thing.
Let me unmute my microphone. Yes, not safe for work. That's the places you shouldn't go. And I played a little bit of the trailer, and I've played it before, and it definitely is not safe for work. And I got to say, watching that trailer, it gives me the heebie-jeebies every time I start watching it. And if people watching at home earlier on, I was controlling it, and I stopped like halfway through, and that was personal reasons. I just didn't want to see the. In my older age, I've gotten very, very squeamish, and yeah, that stuff just that hits me to the bone. But if it's making me feel that way, then he did a good job.
Yeah. The funny thing is, I knew how the film was going to go, and even when I was watching, like I watched it a few months ago, and even I was like, oh, like I was watching it for the first time, and I knew what was going to happen.
Well, aren't you also like an extra in it at some point?
Yeah, me and my niece Jade, we went to a restaurant down in Delaware for the shoot. He shot part of the film in a restaurant down in Delaware, and we had to be patrons in the restaurant. So we were like, Well, I'm not going to give it away, but we were in the restaurant. Let's
Yeah,
just say that.
so if anything, go watch it just to find where's Rick.
Yeah, I'm kind of like Waldo. I'm in there somewhere.
Once you find him, you have to drink. That's a rule. Every time you see Rick, you have to drink.
The funny thing is, he left me in there for a few shots, so I'm on screen for a good minute, maybe minute and a half.
Right. That's awesome, dude. That's great. You know, we've all got our little cameos. I had a little cameo in Rab himself from Jackass's movie. You get to be in horror films.
Nice.
It all works out.
Absolutely. All right. So before we wrap up tonight, there is one other thing I wanted to bring up. We didn't get a chance. When we talked to the Colonial Theater back in October about their October virtual event, they mentioned that they were going to be doing a Christmas event. And, just because of the way everything timed out with my schedule, and I guess they started posting about this about two and a half weeks ago, we just didn't get a chance to get them on air. But I do want to bring it up because they are having another virtual event, and I wanted to let everybody know about this. It is this coming Saturday, actually, the 5th of December. This is an event, I'm going to pull it up here on my phone, called the Krampus Crypt-mas Spectacular. The Krampus Crypt-mas Spectacular.
How do you spell that? I'm trying to find info on it.
Well, just
Krampus.
go to colonialtheater.com.
All right, I'm there.
And there will be links in colonialtheater.com. I'll post it on the show notes for the show too.
Oh, I see it. Here it is.
So what this is, it's another virtual night where you basically sign up for this. It's $15 the entire night. Yeah, there it is on if you're watching on on the video. $15, and there are three movies that they're going to be showing. One of them is going to be I'm trying to see here, Horror Express, which is an old school 1970s, early 70s film with Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. There's another one, I think Santa Claus versus the Martians or something is on there. I believe is one of the other ones.
Santa Claus Conquers the
Martians. There you go.
Conquers from 1964.
1964.
Wow.
There we go. So
Santa Claus versus the Devil.
Here, let me get my glasses on so I can read the damn thing.
Holiday medley. I could do this.
I still can't read it.
Yeah,
there we go.
We got technology to make it so that you can read it. There we go.
Santa Claus versus the Devil. Right. Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. Holiday medley, which is shorts, and Horror Express. So for $15, it's great. I did the one in October. I sat through the whole thing. I think it was the 10th or something of October. It was like a Saturday night. I just kind of logged on the computer and hunkered in for the night with a few adult beverages and some snacks, and it was a fun night. And they have a Discord page where you can go on and kind of chat, and I did that too. I signed in under Paradelphia that night and was talking to Dash Daring and some of the people watching the movies. It was cool. It was kind of like a little communal event. So they're doing that again this Saturday, the 5th. Tickets are on sale now. Go to colonialtheater.com or just look for our post, because I've posted on our social media a couple times in the last week or so about this. But we will also put show notes in for them this week on the show, because we like to support those guys, and I wanted to get them on the show. It just didn't. We just didn't have time. Like I had Mario scheduled to come on tonight, and we just didn't have time before they were going to put their event together. But we like to support those guys, and I think they have something coming up in the springtime. I believe Dash was talking about in October. I know they usually do a thing called Splatterfest, and you would like that, Mike. Yeah, I know. Splatterfest. It's all these like old school, like Dario Argento type early 70s.
I was totally thinking something else.
That's a whole different type of theater.
I heard Pee Wee went to that one, but yes. So go ahead.
So anyway, they're going to be doing that, I think, in the springtime. I think it's in March, if I'm not mistaken. We'll find out more about that later. But as far as this weekend, Saturday night, if you got nothing to do, it's a great time. $15, you can't beat it. And they have shirts on sale again. I got my I don't have it on right now, but I got my shirt from Halloween. They do have shirts on sale. They have I think it's Quilt Face Studios, I think is what it's called. Quilt Face Studios. They create all their shirts, and they're really, really cool designs. So they're on sale as well. So again, Saturday night, if you're not doing anything and you want to hang out, watch some horror movies, and chit chat, I will be on Discord with those guys. And there's a whole, like I said, it's kind of like with Mario's movies. There's this whole like underground community.
Yeah, it's a whole community. I mean, I've said it before. It's a community of people that are like-minded people, but also just get together and support each other and talk to each other and have a good time. So Rick keeps on saying, if you got nothing going on, even if you've got something going on, cancel those plans. It's COVID anyway. What are you doing? You're sitting inside watching.
This is true. What am I thinking? No one's doing anything Saturday night.
You're sitting inside watching The Office season 1 for the 20th time. I mean, wipe the Cheetos or the Doritos off your chest.
Yeah.
Get up from the couch. Get over, turn on your laptop or turn on your computer, Chromecast it to your TV, and watch this and interact. And it's an interactive experience, unlike a video game or unlike a movie. You get to interact with the people that are involved, that put this together, with the fans, with the cast, with everything that is a part of this whole movement put on by the Colonial Theater, and the people that are involved with this, with the movies and the Blobfest and everything else. And it's Krampus.
Yeah.
How can you not get on board with the demonic Krampus?
Krampus, yeah.
Krampus
Crypt-mas. Yeah,
Krampus Crypt. It's a tongue twister, but it's a lot of fun. So yeah, go ahead and tune into this one.
And it's a great cause, and like I said, the theaters, like any other small business, they're trying to survive this whole COVID bullshit, and hopefully by next summer we'll be beyond all this, and they'll go back to doing Blobfest, and God knows we'll be there to cover it. So if it's happening, we'll be there. But in the meantime, we want to support them, make sure that we get from here to there. All right, guys. So it's been a fun night. It's definitely been an interesting interview. I want to thank Mario Cerrito again for stopping by. He is a busy man with his movies and his behind the scenes shenanigans here, trying to get everything distributed, and basically he's working on a lot of different. He's got balls in the air. I don't mean that the way you're going to say, Mike, but because I know what you're thinking.
Balls. By the way, we have Halloween. Jesus Christ, Toxic Radio's Christmas music, which we go by Grab Your Balls. If you go to the Toxic, Grab Your Christmas Balls. If you go over to the Toxic Radio store, available through the Toxic Radio app or at toxicradio.net, the links are there. Any and all merchandise is $5 off. You just use the promo code BALLS, BALLS.
Nice. And I heard you playing some of it when we walked in here.
Yeah, Fish has this whole thing where he makes me promise that December 1st to the end till the end of December is our kick-ass Christmas music all month long. So we've already started. If you're feeling in the mood to get a little jolly, you want to escape from the fact that COVID's still wreaking havoc, sitting in your house, turn on and you'll hear some rocking Christmas music 24 hours on toxicradio.net.
We should have a virtual Christmas party.
So people don't know, I always have a Toxic Radio Christmas party. I've been having them almost every single year.
Yeah.
And I get food and drinks, and we have a good time, and we broadcast live our drunken stupidity. And it's kind of like a company Christmas party that the fans get to be a part of. And sadly this year, I've told people that I wasn't going to have it, but I've been thinking about possibly having a virtual one. It's not the same, but it's something.
Yeah, we could put something together. We'll figure something out.
Alcohol can be at all places at once.
Do like Colonial's doing. Do like a Discord server, and we'll have chat with the people out there, and
it'll be a Toxic Radio OnlyFans. Let's do it.
We'll figure something out. All right, so it's been a fun night. So I want to again thank Mario for coming on. If you guys want to see Human Hibachi, again go to Human Hibachi. I can't say it. It's like a tongue twister. HumanHibachi.com. And look for his stuff in the future, man. This is an up and coming filmmaker. I don't just say that because he's a friend of mine. I say this because he does damn good work, and you're going to be hearing a lot more about him in the future. Believe me. All right, guys, been a fun night. Thank you to Mike for doing the production work. Thank you guys for listening. This has been Paradelphia, and we are out of here.